Chief Trong, thank you for being here from London. It's great to have you to testify on this important piece of legislation. Chief, Bill C-16 creates a sweeping safety valve that lets judges ignore mandatory minimum sentences for almost every serious offense, including many violent and repeat offenses, whenever they decide that the minimum would be cruel and unusual. Given the documented rise in violent crime and repeat offending in London, do you believe this change will make it harder for your officers to keep dangerous offenders off the streets? And will it undermine the deterrent effect that mandatory minimums have historically provided?
Thank you for that question, and Chair, through you. You know, I would say this. I would say that sentences, it is very important that sentences reflect the severity of the crime. That is extremely important, and it is important with respect to denunciation and deterrence, but it is very important when you have victims involved. When the victims see the sentences that are handed out, and if they're not proportionate to the crime, that creates a loss of confidence in the justice system. It creates a loss of confidence in society, and it causes implications in policing and trust with police and the court system.
Right now, we have the government packaging this massive weakening of mandatory minimums inside a bill that is being sold as protecting women and children. And as Chief, I'm wondering if you support or oppose giving judges this new discretion to go below mandatory minimums for serious violent crimes in London. And do you believe it will help or hinder your force's ability to reverse the local crime increases that we're seeing right now?
Thank you, and Chair, through you. Mandatory minimums that are imposed, typically already, they're imposed on serious offenses that impact the community. That's why you have the mandatory minimums. I can't, as a police chief, I can't opine on what if. What I can tell you is that as a police chief, I strongly feel that sentences need to reflect the severity of the crime. That is full stop. When that does not happen, there's an erosion of trust and safety in the community. When that does not happen, it impacts my officers in London and their understanding and their confidence in the justice system. When serious offenders do not receive the sentences and the punishment that are reflective of the crime and the harm that they've caused to community and victims, that is a huge blow to policing and our officers.
Chief, we know London is experiencing increased gun violence, intimate partner homicides, and repeat offenders cycling through the system. Why should Parliament hand judges a blanket power to water down the very sentencing floors that target the worst offenders? And perhaps from a frontline policing perspective, will this so-called safety valve make your job tougher by encouraging lighter sentences for those very criminals that your officers arrest over and over and over again?
Thank you, and Chair, through you. I think the mandatory minimums that are imposed on the particular offenses that you're speaking of, or that we're speaking of, that involve harm and violence to the community, I think mandatory minimums are important. And again, the safety valve that is being proposed, I would say the positive aspect from a policing perspective is that in principle, when sentences are not being handed down reflective of the mandatory minimums that is in legislation, that causes challenges to our organization and policing as a whole.